Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is Mohamad ZULHELMI bin ZULKAFLI. Before we go further, let me introduce you a little bit of this movie, or we can call it as the synopsis. This movie named The Bankers is a 2020 American period history drama film directed, co-written and produced by Josh Nolfi. It was released in a limited theatrical on 6th of March 2020 before digital streaming on 20th of March 2020 by Apple's TV+. The film stars Anthony Mackie as Bernard Garrett, Nicholas Hoult as Matt Steiner, and Samuel Jackson as Joe Morris. This movie was inspired by a true event as in 1960s, two African-American entrepreneurs plot a brilliant business plan to fight for housing integration and take on the racist establishment of the 1960s by helping other African-Americans pursue the American dream. Joe and Bernard together convinced Matt Steiner, a white man, to pose as the front of the company in meetings to facilitate the sales, while Garrett and Morris posed as a janitor and a chauffeur. They taught Matt the basics of real estate investing. Their success ultimately draws the attention of the federal government, which threatens everything the three of them have built.
Hi, I'm Bernard Garrett. I'd like to speak with Mr. Reed, please.
I'm sorry, Mr. Reed is out. May I take a message?
I have pretty good eyesight and I can clearly read the nameplate on his desk.
I'm sorry, I misspoke. Mr. Reed can't meet with you right now, but I could take a message.
No, there's no message.
In this first critical incident or scenes is actually when Mr. Bernard Garrett is going to the bank to make a loan to buy a building, and he asks the clerk for Mr. Reed. So basically, Mr. Bernard asks the clerk about Mr. Reed, and she responds that Mr. Reed is not in the office, while actually Mr. Bernard can see him clearly in the office. The theory actually applied here is work ethics. The problem here is the clerk is actually lying to Mr. Bernard that Mr. Reed is not in the office. This shows a very poor work ethics and unprofessional behavior in workplace. Lying is not one of the solutions for this. Based on the theory also, this really not appropriate to lie to the client when they first time to come to the office. It will cause the client to feel very angry and frustrated with the service of the bank. In fact, I think for the improvement, the clerk should speak honestly at the first place and just tell to Mr. Bernard that Mr. Reed is not free at that time, or her can tell Mr. Bernard to make an appointment. As simple as that, to avoid any conflict.
I'll give you two options. We get an 11% capital return rate, and you get your 25% profit in the markup. Or we get a 10.5% cap rate, and you take an 18% instead of a 25% markup. You can choose, but he can't help you.
Not what I expected, Matt Steiner. I'll take the latter. How'd I do?
You left $17,000 on the table.
Oh well. What's the number?
$1,554,060. But we can call it an even $1,560,000 if you leave me that desk.
From the second critical incident shows when Matt Steiner is trying to approach and influence Mr. Renault to sell his building to Matt Steiner and agreed to do so. From this scene, we can see clearly that Matt Steiner using persuasive communication, which means communication that focuses on guiding, convincing audience to adopt certain ideas, actions, and attitudes. From the scene, we can see clearly that Matt Steiner used all facts and tell every details about the price of the building to convince Mr. Renault. This is positive verbal communication that give a very convincing way to attract someone. At last, Mr. Renault, amazed with Matt Steiner that can do math just in his brain, and agreed to sell the building. Matt Steiner used very good techniques of communication in his workplace, but for me, in improvement, maybe he can speak more slowly or a little bit slowly in the conversation to show that he is more confident when talking to gain respect from Mr. Renault or trust from others.
I'd co-own the next bank. We even put it in the contract.
3 months ago, you didn't know the first thing about banking.
And I've learned a lot in that time.
It's not that I don't have faith in you, it's just
What?
it's $274,000 of Joe's and my money. We should at least have the final say, right?
I can't become my own man here, then I think I need to resign to go back to our bank.
In this scene, Matt Steiner is actually trying to convince Mr. Bernard and Mr. Joe Morris to help him buy the National Bank of Marlin and make him the owner of that bank. But Joe Morris and Mr. Bernard disagree because Matt Steiner only knew about banking just only 3 months and does not have any experience yet. Here is when Matt Steiner using paralanguage when he upset that both of his friends reject his idea. Paralanguage is referred to the vocal sounds such as murmurs, gaps, and vocal qualities such as volume, rhythm, pitch, and also intonation. In this scene, Matt Steiner sighed like and the tone of his voice becomes slow to show his frustration. The effect is Mr. Bernard and Joe Morris actually feel pity to him, but at the same time also angry to him, seeing Matt Steiner suggesting something that really risky to buy that bank. Actually, if there are any takeaway from this scene, we should just stay calm during any discussion or meeting. If the majority in the meeting choose not to take our suggestion, because sometimes more brain is far more better than just one.
No one is going after that market, but I can.
Your confidence is impressive, but 10,000 less than asking is not enough.
Once I lease the units, I can give you your full asking price. Let's say by June.
You want me to loan you $10,000 so you can buy my building?
Well, it's not a loan, it's an investment.
It's a loan. For more than 3 times what the average American family make in a year.
2.4 times.
What?
The average American income in 1953 was $4,233. 10,000 is 2.4 times the average income.
Well, I admire your entrepreneurial gusto, but it's not the way I do business. I'm sorry.
The fourth critical incident of this movie is regarding the negotiating skills. Negotiating is a process of communicating back and forth for the purpose of reaching a joint agreement about differing needs or ideas. Based on this movie, we can see that both Mr. Bernard and Mr. Barker looks really good in their negotiating skills. As for Mr. Bernard, he was really well prepared to deal with Mr. Barker because we can see that he provides all those statistical facts regarding the average American income, which is a really good approach to convince Mr. Barker. Besides, Mr. Barker also was polite as he showed his respectful disagreement towards Mr. Bernard. He made a compliment to Mr. Bernard by saying, "Well, I admire your entrepreneurial gusto," before disagreeing the offer made by Mr. Bernard and ended with, "I am sorry." Due to this good negotiation between them, there was no conflict happen at all. Unfortunately, there are no full agreement within both parties, but yet we can consider it as a fine quality of negotiation. Well, despite the disagreement by Mr. Barker, Mr. Bernard should not stop his negotiation. He should take a break and reconsider the counteroffer made by Mr. Barker or find other solution before making another appointment with Mr. Barker.
What? There isn't anything on this top sheet about individual loan limits, dollar amounts, or durations. They're all averages. They didn't lie. They just hid the shit in the averages.
How the hell did our lawyer miss that?
Oh, I couldn't use O'Keefe.
What?
Bernard checked the property so fast I moved up the purchase date. O'Keefe couldn't make it, so I hired someone else.
How'd you find him?
I asked around.
You asked around. He asked around. What the hell does that mean?
We told you you weren't ready to run your own bank. We told you. You forced our hand, now here we are.
find this lawyer. Who, Matt?
Florence. Florence! You asked Florence.
He switched the goddamn mortgage.
The next critical incident of this movie is regarding making decision skills. The ability to make decisions is a valuable leadership trait, and it shows your ability to think objectively and consider different options. An ability to make a quick decision can help establish a strong bond of trust with other employees that can strengthen your company's culture. We analyzed that Matt Steiner had made a bad decision making as he did not use the lawyer Bernard recommended, who is O'Keefe, but instead he asked Florence, the one who put bad loans into the package. His actions then actually get him, Joe and Bernard all arrested under federal banking laws. This really shows that there is an ineffective communication, since Matt works under Bernard and Joe should follow his leader's order, but the opposite happens. Matt Steiner should ask or refer Joe and Bernard first before making a decision. He should ask what to do if he could not meet the Bernard's recommended lawyer O'Keefe. That's how it should work. The leader then may help the employees with other possible solutions instead of making a useless decision.
I'm worried.
About what?
I don't always do great under pressure.
Come on. You're a natural.
Natural what?
Performer.
How do you know that?
You think I got where I am in life without being able to spot talent? Okay.
Yes, sir.
The sixth critical incident in this movie is relating to the confidence building. What is confidence? Confidence is a mixture of courage, strength, and the ability to pick yourself up when something fails. It is a really important aspect in handling any problems or pressure in a workplace environment. Based on what we have seen in the scene, we can describe Matt Steiner's lack of self-confidence. He said that he cannot do well under pressure because this is her first day working in real estate investing job. Lack of self-confidence, Matt Steiner became worried to meet Charles Renault, the owner of the banker's building, in negotiating to buy a building in Los Angeles. However, this time he made a right decision making as he expressed his nervousness feelings toward his boss, Joe Morris. Joe Morris is such an inspirational leader as he managed to motivate Matt Steiner by saying that he got a talent. We can see that Matt Steiner becomes more motivated to complete his task. Since Joe Morris is there, he can get the motivation straight away from his leader. However, in case he's doing his job alone, Matt Steiner should learn to engage more in positive talks or to use positive visual imagery to boost his confidence.
Hey, nice car.
Thanks. But alright, this is my friend Matt.
Hey, you didn't tell me you had a rich uncle. Nice to meet you.
Hardly rich, and I'm his cousin.
You got a car, you're rich to me.
Hey, good luck finding the right place.
Hey.
Critical incident 7 is effective communication. Effective communication is verbal and non-verbal communication that contains social function before start the conversation. From the scene, we can see that before Matt Steiner begin the conversation, he start with a small talk, which is by praising Mr. Bernard Carr, and also before and also ending the conversation with a small talk, which is giving a simple wave before Mr. Bernard left. The effect is Mr. Bernard will feel proud because of the Matt Steiner praise his car, and it also will and also Mr. Bernard will gain more confidence to be more success in the future. It shows that Matt Steiner have a good effective communication skill and social interaction. For the recommendation, at the end of the scene, instead of give simple wave, in my opinion, Matt Steiner should shake hands with Mr. Bernard to show that he respect Mr. Bernard more.
Barker would like to offer a buyout for your interest in all the Barker Garrett properties. I have no reason to sell. I'm happy running the buildings on my own.
That's unacceptable. I don't want to be a businessman. I prefer not to continue the arrangement.
What's the offer? This is outrageous. I own 50% of a dozen properties. You want me to give it up for pennies on the dollar?
I don't have to pay you. Your name doesn't appear on any of the deals.
But it couldn't. We had an agreement, and we all.
Critical incident 8, which is racist behavior. Racist behavior means discrimination of religion, color and background, or in other words, prejudice against person or people based on their ethnic or race. From the scene, we can see that after Mr. Barker died, his wife, Mrs. Barker, want to cancel all the agreement made between Mr. Barker and Mr. Bernard by giving two options to Mr. Bernard, which is to buy all the properties at a cheaper price, or doesn't want to pay any cent to Mr. Bernard just because he is a black man. For the effect, Mr. Bernard will feel disappointed and dissatisfied with the option given by Mrs. Barker. This is because Mr. Bernard owns 50% of the properties based on the agreement made. So from that we can see that Mrs. Barker has a racist behavior towards Mr. Bernard. For the recommendation, from my view, Mrs. Barker can cancel the agreement by pay a compensation to Mr. Bernard, or purchase all the property owned by Mr. Bernard at a fair price to avoid injustice to Mr. Bernard.
National Mortgage Company. There's no description of that.
It's a broker's fee.
$189,000 as a finder's fee for a $971,000 package of loans sitting in an aggregator's office in Houston. That's a pretty hefty finder's fee.
19.5%, but that includes payment for future consultation.
It's a strange arrangement. Mr. Garrett, Mr. Morris?
Is that something that should concern you? Aren't you here to make sure my bank is sound?
Okay, let's turn to the loan.
Critical incident 9, which is turn-taking in communication. Turn-taking in communication is a cycle or a process begins with one person starts to speak and follow up with the other person until the conversation ends. From the in the scene, we can see that when the auditor asks Matt Steiner about who is Mr. Morris and Mr. Barrett, Matt Steiner quickly interrupted the auditor by talking about the other topics. So for the effect, the auditor thought that Matt Steiner's action was strange and unacceptable. So the auditor will also talk that Matt Steiner had done something big problem, and or he is messed up with something when the auditor asks that question. This is show that Matt Steiner doesn't follow the turn-taking in communication. For the recommendation, I think that Matt Steiner should let the auditor finish his question first before giving his answer or respond or talk about the other topic, so that the auditor will comfortable with him.
To summarize, there are many lessons that we can learn from the movie or the scene in this movie, The Banker, in terms of professional and unprofessional behavior. These critical incidents help us to highlight about work ethic, decision making, and also about how we speak to each other in partnership or in workplace. In this movie also shows us that we cannot become racist with anyone because it is a bad attitude in work or at any other places and also can hurt others' feelings. We can conclude that if we do not apply professional communication skill, it will affect our relationship with our partner or our work. So we must remember to always respect others, interacting professionally and listen attentively to have a better working environment. That's all from us. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.